All right, we're going to be working on factoring notes number 3, and primarily we're going to be focusing on what's called difference of squares. Now, we worked on this in the last chapter, and we're going to kind of review that first, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to actually factor that. So if I look here, it says review from 8-4, simplify, okay? And so if we look at this, we are basically just going to be foiling, okay? And remember that when I had a minus and I had a plus, that middle should have started canceling out. And so I'm going to go ahead and start foiling this out. So when I do that, I'm going to get a squared plus 3a minus 3a and then minus 9. Again, keep in mind that those middles cancel and we get a squared minus 9. So when we were talking about difference of squares, we talked about the factors being exactly the same, just one was a minus and one was a plus, and that the middles canceled out. So we always ended up with a binomial. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at the next one here. Okay, first off, there's a typo, so let's go ahead and get this changed. This guy here, mark that out, and let's put a minus there in the middle. Okay, so now we're looking at multiple variables. Again, that middle should cancel out. And so when I start doing 4x times 4x, I get 16x squared minus 20xy plus 20xy and minus 25y squared. Okay, again, the middle cancels, so I have 16x squared minus 25y squared. Now, when we talked about difference of squares, we were actually referring to the answer here, difference of squares. So we have a minus sign right here, and squares means I can take the square root of each part. So if I kind of look at this just briefly, if I were to square root that 16, notice up here I've got a 4 and a 4. It's the same thing with the x. If I square root the x squared, it breaks x squared breaks into 4x and 4x. Same thing back here. I have to have a minus, square root, and I get 25y and 25y. All right, so now let's go back to the first problem we did here and see if it works for there as well. So if I'm thinking about this, first off, difference of squares, you got to have that minus in the middle. If we don't have this guy right here, it's no good. All right, and so then I check. Okay, a squared. Yep, I can break that into a and a. And can I square root 9? Yep, I got a 3 and a 3. And again, it'll just be a plus or a minus. All right, so now let's look down. This one actually says factor. Okay, so now we know the middle canceled out. All right, and what I did teach you originally was that you would take the 1 times the negative 49 and get negative 49 that adds up to 0, because we talked about that there would be 0 r's in the middle. Okay, and we would come up with negative 7 and positive 7, and since there's a 1 out front, we can shortcut that and go r minus 7 and r plus 7. Okay, that's how I taught it to you originally, and it's kind of the same thing. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the shortcut. If I square root this, that breaks me down to r and r. And if I square root 49, I get 7 and 7. And with that negative, I need to have a negative and a positive. So instead of kind of making this whole thing over here and doing this and showing the work and whatnot, if you've got what we call a difference of squares, in other words, you can square root with a minus in the middle, you can go straight down here to your answer of r minus 7 and r plus 7. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Okay, so I'm looking, can I square root? The answer is yes. 16h squared goes to a 4h and 4h. I have a minus and a plus, and then the square root here would be 3a and 3a. And that would be your difference of squares shortcut. Okay, now keep in mind, difference of squares has to start with a binomial. So if you have 3 parts, this is not going to work. This only works with a 2-parter. Okay, all right, example 3. Okay, same thing again. Doesn't matter if the variable's out back. We're going to square root and square root. So the square root of 121 is 11. I have a plus, I have a minus, and the square root of 4b squared would be 2b and 2b. And that would be your answer. Okay, so now, picking up what we always know is our step 1. Step 1 is always to pull a GCF. Okay, so we're going to kind of start incorporating that now. So since I have an x involved in both of these, I'm going to pull out an x and get 9x squared minus 4. All right, Now, when I look at this guy right here, I'm asking myself, is this a difference of squares? So can I square root and square root? If you can, you need to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take x and I'm going to break up 9x squared goes to 3x, 3x. I have a plus and a minus, and then the 4 breaks up to 2 and 2. And that right there would be your final answer with your GCF pulled out front. Okay. All right, example 5. Okay. Now notice on this one that we've got to the 4th power. Now realize 4s can break down easily too. We can square root this. Okay. So if I square root 81, I'm going to have 9 and 9. I have a plus. I have a minus. Now with this y to the 4th, when I square root it, I'm going to get y squared and y squared. So it breaks up to 2 and 2. Okay. Now here's the kicker when you have something like this. Okay. This guy is done. You can't do anything with that positive. There's nowhere to go here for this guy. But if I sit and look at this guy right here, I have to ask myself, with that minus in the middle, can I square root and square root? And the answer is yes. So when I rewrite this, the 9 plus y squared won't go anywhere because that's not a difference of squares, okay? But when I look at this guy, if I can square root this and this, I have to go ahead and break that down. So in this case, we're actually doing 2 differences of squares. So we did it right at the beginning here, and now we're going to do it again here. So that 9 is going to break into 3 and 3. I'm going to have a plus and minus, and y squared breaks into y and y. Now, there's no difference of squares or anything else because these are, remember, one and done. We talked about it that if we have an exponent of 1, that means we're done. We can't go any farther with it. So all of this is good, and since there was a plus here, that wasn't a difference of squares. So this right here is going to be my solution. Okay, so example 6. All right, so start with your GCF first. Okay, so I'm going to pull out a 5x and get x to the 4th minus 9. Okay, now again, this is a difference of squares. I can square root, minus in the middle, so that meets all my rules. So when I square root, oh, I made a mistake here. This would be to the 4th. Apparently it's not going to let me erase. Okay, make this to the 4th. That was my fault. So we're going to have x squared minus 3 and x squared plus 3. Okay, now what I want you to keep in mind though is on this guy right here, while I broke it down and I still have squares and I have the minus, can I square root this 3? No, I cannot. And so since I can't square root 3 and get a whole answer, a whole number out, you're done. So this right here would be your final solution. So if you can't square root it, you can't go any farther. All right, let's go over to the next page now. Okay. All right, number 7. All right, so 4 terms. Again, still looking for a GCF. But with a 2, a 1, a 50, 25, I don't have a GCF all 4. So we're going to go straight to our grouping. 4 terms, we always group. Keep that negative with that 50. And so if I look here, I can pull out an m squared. And let's see, I have 2m plus 1 left. And on this one, I'm going to pull a negative 25. That way my signs will match up. So I get 2m plus 1. All right, so now rewrite m squared minus 25. Put together my outside. And then 2m plus 1. Now again, I have an exponent of a 1 here on this guy, so this guy can't go any farther. But I have an exponent of a 2, so I'm looking, yep, I've got a minus. Now, can I square root this? Yes, I can. Can I square root 25? Yes, I can. So I need to go ahead and take it one step further. M squared breaks into m and m. I have a plus and a minus. And then 25, the square root of that is 5 and 5. And then I still have the 2m plus 1 hanging out. So now I have exponents. All of them are 1 and 1 and done. Okay? And so this right here would be my answer. Okay? All right. Now complete these following problems, and this will be due tomorrow.